The United States has a long and ugly history of lying its population into war. We have the infamous Gulf of Tonkin incident that didn't even happen, part of it that helped get us into the Vietnam War. Of course, we have George Bush's famous 2003 weapons of mass destruction that are imminently going to be used. And in this current war with Iran, President Trump said, they have nuclear weapons and they're weeks away from having a nuclear weapon, all that kind of stuff. There's another one that we're trying to launch now, and I cannot believe we even have to talk about this. It is so absurd that I can't believe that even this, with all of that wreckage that I just described that's happened, and all the wars and all the people that have died as a result of it, Americans, people in the target countries, now then we're talking about going into Cuba. And these lies are getting worse and worse and weaker and weaker. At least the George W. Bush administration had I don't even know, the courage. It's probably not the right word, but at least they thought the people were paying enough attention that they thought, well, we can't just go and do it. We have to come up with some really good explanation. So they went to so much trouble to claim, all this yellow cake stuff, this connection to Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein was doing all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, the infamous vial held up by Secretary of State Colin Powell at the United Nations Security Council meeting, claiming that all these chemical weapons they have and biological weapons and who knows what all else could cause all kinds of widespread death, et cetera. And we had to go in there as an imminent threat, et cetera. This time with the Iran war, President Trump he was a lot lazier, and he just said, oh yeah, they have weapons of mass destruction. Trust me. That was bad. This one with Cuba, though, is just weird and stupid. And so they're just coming up with unbelievably thin gruel to try and justify this. With President Trump going into Iran, I mean, the whole talk about a nuclear weapon, he'd been doing that since 2015 when he first started running for president. He was always on that. He was all against the JCPOA that Obama signed. He's just been on that for his whole career. But this one with Cuba, this is kind of all brand new. Like, we're just scrambling to find something because we just want to go in and use military force against Cuba. And so the most recent one was trot out. Her name is Melissa Ford Maldonado from the America First Policy Institute. And earlier today on Fox News, she wants to drop that the Cubans represent a massive threat to the United States.
Cuba is a massive national security threat to the U.S. They are a hostile communist regime that is only 90 miles from Florida, and they have a 67-year record of working actively against American interests, supporting all of our adversaries, and exporting revolution around the world. And they have a long record of targeting the United States itself as well. So one of the things that I talk about in the paper is how the Cuban Revolution has never just been confined to the island. It's more of an international project, is the way that I like to think about it. But they have a very simple mission, and you have to give it to them. They have a very simple foreign affairs, but it's always been to weaken the United States, to strengthen its adversaries, and to export revolution around the world.
A very simple message. They want to destroy America, basically. They want to just weaken America. Little tiny Cuba, it's off the coast of Florida, wants to destroy America. And they've been doing this for 67 years, she says. Now, that's kind of hearkening. You see that that's a cheap steal from the current argument we make with Iran all the time. 47 years they've been at war with us. They started this, which was nonsense, because in that particular case, we went to war with them. We're the ones that supported an 8-year war through the proxy of Iraq for the first 8 years of their existence, basically. And all the sanctions we've had on them throughout that time, the attacks that we've made on their interests around the world, the assassinations we've done of their leaders, et cetera, even before the 2025 and now the current war we're fighting in 2026. So that's what we did then. So they kind of stole that. Now then, they've been doing this for 67 years. Well, you may recall there's something called the Bay of Pigs, where we tried to overthrow their government and use some of their people to do it. And then there was, we then put sanctions. Of course, the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, that was a legit issue on that one. But that was handled. And then we had the Bay of Pigs issue. And then we tried to assassinate Fidel Castro, apparently a whole bunch of times, scores of times, apparently, according to some reports. We had them sanctioned all the way through. So we've done everything we could economically to starve them to death. And now here, the last number of months, we have President Trump has put the screws even tighter with a naval blockade to basically starve them to death. And we want to say they have been at war with us. And listen, this whole claim that she's making there that, oh yeah, they've been trying to export communism and radical revolution around the world. Okay, lay it out then for us, Ms. Maldonado. Let's have it. Where are all these massive successes that they've had, that it's now a massive, because that's the word she used, threat to the United States. That's something we have to really worry about, because holy cow, look at all these countries falling left and right, all around us, all in the hemisphere of our country, all around us. My goodness, we better take care of this before, oh my gosh, they come and get us. I mean, you see, even without me giving you any more further evidence, that is just such a nonsensical statement. Every word of that is just ridiculous. This tiny country that can barely keep the lights on. Listen, I went to Cuba. I think it was 2016 with the church group that I was part of at the time, and we were ministering to some folks there. And I took a number of photographs there. And one thing really stood out to me that this is an incredibly poor country. I mean, there are not very many cars that are out there, and all of them, I mean, they literally look like they're all from the 1950s. I don't think they have anything new. I didn't see any while I was there. And you see most of the transport is bicycle or horse-drawn. I mean, they just don't have vehicles. So that's how poor off the people were. I mean, they could barely keep, the grocery stores barely had any food in them. That's in 2016. And this particular one here, where they're just herding cattle, just like it was back in the old days. And there's just no modernity to it at all. And these people are clearly no threat to anyone. As a means of reference. Okay. Actually, before I'm going to give you that, let me give you one other thing. Now, Ms. Maldonado there, of course, was just echoing what, I don't know, this combination of whatever the mainstream media is doing to try to perpetuate this. And of course, she's just taking a cue from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who is the lead antagonist here and the one who just has this obsession with taking Cuba. God only knows what's going on behind the scenes between him and President Trump. Almost surely, because President Trump doesn't really have a dog in this fight. I think he's just said, yeah, I'm going to throw you a bone, Mr. Rubio. Whatever you wanted to do is fine. We'll support that, I guess. If it makes some people happy, yeah, why not? That's what I suspect. I don't know that. This is one particular case I don't have any insider information on, but I'm just looking at the evidence here. And since Rubio has been so out front on this, we have to suggest that he somehow convinced President Trump to let him do this. But he sure did. This is what, you may have seen our show on this earlier, but if you haven't, this is what Ms. Maldonado is basically echoing from this hyperventilating piece by Marco Rubio.
You guys released a 100-page report on Cuba, calling it the capital of 21st century communism. And this report talks about the fact that Cuba's goal essentially is to erase the United States from the earth. The report also links Cuban influence to the rise of Antifa, the riots that we saw in 2020, as well the surge of radical activism that we've seen all over these college campuses. To the average person, those things feel generally organic, but it turns out there are a lot of different powers, Cuba being one of them, that are influencing all of these things day to day.
Absolutely. It's the same network of protesters around the country. They were the same people you saw on the streets burning things in 2020. They then flip it around and they become the pro-Hamas protesters, and they flip it around and within 48 hours of Maduro's arrest have pre-printed signs outside the courthouse demanding his release. And then they're out there doing the ICE stuff, attacking ICE agents. There's nothing organic about it. It is funded, it is organized, and Cuba is a part of that network, and in some cases, a critical part of that network. And it's a network they will weaponize against us.
Ooh, they will weaponize it against us. And then what more proof do you need than they have after just 48 hours pre-printed signs? Because everybody knows that the only protesters that are legitimate these days are those that someone goes out with a crayon and writes on. And so if somebody printed one, I mean, it's not like they could get on their computer, make up a sign, run over to Kinko's and have it printed, or just hit print and go on their computer there in a few minutes, send it to their friends. I mean, obviously they couldn't do that. Come on, man. That's your proof, pre-printed signs. I mean, have you ever been to a Trump rally? All the signs are pre-printed. Whatever they're doing, it's always pre-printed. All these things are. That's kind of the modern era. I don't know who falls for this kind of stuff, but because they're pre-printed somehow means something. But then you see he's also going way over they're trying to erase America from the earth, for God's sake. Little tiny Cuba, great big America. And they're going to erase us, and we need to be afraid of that. That is so stupid, just on the surface of it. I'll show you how stupid in a second. But let's take what else he said there, because what you see there, they're also trying to minimize you, Americans, and say that everything nefarious, everything that's bad, everything that where anyone's protesting against something that this administration likes, well, that was the Cubans. They were behind this. Other people were. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Antifa. And then, of course, there's this pro-Palestinian people. Of course, he calls them pro-Hamas, etc. Turns out that no, it was a foreign power behind them, but it was, who? It was the Cubans. Funny how he never mentions that maybe some Americans have a brain cell and that they can look at what's going on and they see the moral outrage of a country that we're supporting, Israel, who's conducting a genocide and killing huge numbers of Palestinian people in Gaza, in the West Bank, and now then they're doing the same thing in southern Lebanon. We can see that with our own eyes. And so when people protest for this, the people on behalf of the people who are getting slaughtered, most of them don't even care about their nationality as much as they do their humanity. But see, no, we can't have that. If there's a protest for it, it can't be for humanity. It can't be just because it's an egregious, moral, horrific carnage that's going on that we don't like, and we want to stand up for the defenseless, which used to be the American position, the government position, but no, not anymore. Now then, we're just going to blame all that on somebody else, this nefarious network of people, and oh, by the way, led by the Cubans, who want to erase us from the earth. Erase us from the earth. Now, what would it take to do that? You probably have to have a pretty big military budget, don't you think? I mean, something like the USSR, something like that. And we saw that they were never able to erase us from anything. But, them Cubans, they got them cigars. I bet they can smoke us out, because basically that's the only thing that would be this fantasy in his mind here. Just as a means of reference here, the United States in this current fiscal year, 2026, we have about a $1 trillion defense budget. $1 trillion. Best estimates we can come up with, the Cubans' annual military budget. We haven't even some of these think tanks hadn't been able to pinpoint it because of the opacity of the Cuban side. So we haven't been able to get any updated information. But the last year that there is information was 2018. In that year, they had 128, not billion, million, $128 million annual defense budget. That supports somewhere around 50,000 soldiers of their armed forces. 50,000 total armed forces, $128 million. As a means of comparison, we burned through $128 million in approximately 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 36 seconds of our budget. So that's a little over an hour. An hour. That's our annual budget as compared to the Cubans. And this is the guys that you have to be afraid of, that they're going to erase us from the book. And they're a superpower that transitions governments all over the world and sows fear and dissent and has pre-printed signs. Those darn Cubans. You see how stupid this is? It is utterly ridiculous. Why is this being put forward on television? Why is this not being pushed back on by the media? Why are we even contemplating going and using military power against this tiny country that can barely keep the lights on, that hardly even has any cars? Why do we want to go and use military force against these people? They pose no threat to us whatsoever. Yet that's where we are. That's the country that we're living in today. This is the government that we have. We went to war against Iran when we had no need for it. They were not threatening us. They had not attacked us. They were not going to attack us. They were purely in a defensive mode. Everything they have done since that time has been in their defensive mode. Now then, with the missiles that they use to defend themselves, now all of a sudden they realize that because of our vulnerabilities, they can now use them in an offensive way. Only because we shoved them into that box to where that's the only thing left for them to do. Otherwise, not one American would be dead, and there wouldn't be 600 wounded. We wouldn't have 20 bases wrecked all over the Middle East. We wouldn't have scores of airplanes and other aircraft and helicopters destroyed or damaged. And we wouldn't have been driven out from all these places. We wouldn't have our aircraft carriers getting burned up with crew overuse that we have to replace them. And have all the troubles that we've had. We wouldn't have had any of that stuff if we hadn't started this war of choice. And now we want to start another one against Cuba. Now, I'm sure that Brother Rubio is sitting there thinking it's going to be the same as taking out Venezuela, taking out Maduro. You just go get one guy, Diaz-Canel, maybe, I think is their current president. Maybe he's thinking we'll just go take him out and everything will be fine. But listen, Cuba has a long history. They got a lot of jungles, and it was really hard even for the Fidel Castro regime, or when he was rising up as a rebel, to be able to overcome the Bautista government. And even when some of Castro's guys turned against him, they had to do a lot of guerrilla fighting for years in those mountains, and it took a long time to finally bring them to heel. Several years, if I'm not mistaken. So if they fight, we could get ourselves into another Bay of Pigs kind of disaster and fiasco. Now, I don't know. Maybe they have some kind of an inside deal there too, and they're so weak and so impoverished that they wouldn't be able to. But that's not any benefit to us to say, hey, no, we can crush these guys and it'll be easier. Why? Why should the armed forces of the United States go and beat up on somebody who's starved to death practically and is so weak that they couldn't defend themselves if that's the case? Why do we need to do that? It is just an exceptional abuse of power. It's like saying, look, they aren't doing what we're telling them to do. They won't give me what I want, so I'm just going to take it. That's where we are. And I find that utterly reprehensible, and I condemn it in the strongest terms. There is literally no justification, any justification, much less this crap that the Secretary of State put out, or this paper that this Ms. Maldonado put out. All of it's nonsense. Even if there's some specific pieces that are in there, you got to look at the damn context. Why do you suppose they would be wanting to do something against us? Why would they be trying to undermine us, except that we've been doing that to them for their basically the continuous since 1962? Maybe that could have something to do with it. See, we want to be able to push on everybody. We want to be able to sanction everybody all over the place all the time, and there never be any response. And if anybody dares to do anything back, it's like, oh, see how bad they are, all these bad things they're doing. That's how we operate these days. It just makes me sick. And we need to change at this. We don't just need to go from red to blue, folks. We need to just sweep all of this elite crap out. That's the nicest word that I could use. We need a complete fundamental change in America. Something gets back to the core of what used to be American. We've always had flaws. There's always been dark elements of it, and there's always been people that were doing evil and wicked things in our name all the time. But at least in my lifetime, earlier on, I mean, as a culture and a society, we at least aspired to do the right thing. We aspired to have a moral code. We aspired to help the people that were out there that were weaker, that were being abused, that were being put upon by other strong powers and other regimes, to help them out and to lift them up. We used to at least aspire to that. Now we have literally become, red or blue, the elite. We have become that very dark power we used to stand against and we used to rail against. We have become that. And I for one, am sick of it. And I think that we should do whatever it takes using our legal system, using the Constitution that we have, using our levers of power to get these guys voted out and to bring in a new set, a new generation of Americans that says, no, enough. Y'all all are going to get fired. Fire every one of them. Get them out of here. Quit following them. Expose them like we're trying to do here. And say, not in my name. We're going to go back to something that was before it's too late. Because carried along far enough, you're going to create so many enemies for us around the world. And God help us if we may already be in over our skis too far already with this situation in Iran. I mean, even as we talked about earlier today, they could literally be days away from restarting that war in ways that we can't respond to. We could end up getting sucked into a war against Russia, or they may roll the dice and basically taunt us and dare us to get into a war that could go nuclear by attacking into London, into France or Germany or some other place like that. There's people that are supporting the Ukraine. I mean, all those things are on the table over there, and all of it is so stupid. None of it is necessary. It's time to pull this back before it's too late. I hope it's not too late, but we're going to keep talking to you and telling you the truth and stuff like this so that we can get to a point to where we stop making things worse for ourselves and other people. It's not what used to be American, and I am America first. Genuine Americans like you. Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate you giving me a place to give my air to this stuff here, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.